There we go. Hey, if you got this part of the video, you've got the live unedited edition. Home Gadget Geeks, Thursday night. It's the 3rd of March, I guess 3322. And I want to welcome you to Home Gadget Geeks. If you're listening for the first time, hang tight. We got a little bit of a pre-show here, and then we'll jump into the real show. And even that takes us a while. So if you're one of those folks on YouTube, you're like, takes 7 minutes to get to the point. You've already found the wrong podcast. Just go bother somebody else on somebody else's discussion or on the comments below the video. They'll appreciate that. I delete those. So anyways, you could leave it if you want. But
I was like, get off my proverbial lawn, like
I saw another one. I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and the guy was like, it starts at 7 minutes. You'll thank me. And I put, no, I won't actually down below. So Ken, Brian, Joe, good to see you guys out here. We'll get started in just a second. Marv is with us. Marv's back. Marv, what are you drinking tonight? What did you bring out?
So I've got a Sam Adams, but I've got a different, this is going to be my first time trying this Beach Session IPA.
Beach
That sounds
Session.
really good.
Now, is this a holdover from last summer or like summer's coming kind of beer?
This is the last of that variety pack that I got.
Okay.
And I'm summer ale, summer lager, and there was another one in there. So this, I was kind of holding off on this because I just wasn't quite sure.
Oh,
I'm usually not an IPA kind of guy. So
what do you think? Have you had a sip yet?
No, I was going to wait and do it.
No, let's go ahead and give it a try. Tell me what you think.
It's a little bold.
Bold like IPA bold, or bold like citrusy bold, or what?
Well, it's a little citrusy, but it's more like a what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of maybe one of the big Irish, beers that they really kick you on the way down.
I like that. I've never heard of a beer described that way, as kicking you on the way down.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Usually that's tequila's job, but
it's not as it's not as thick as a Grolsch beer.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit thicker than the American lagers that we're used to.
Yeah. Do you like it? Are you going to get all the way through it? Or
I think I will. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good enough. Mike, you're drinking water. Is that what you?
Yeah, I got to work after this. So stay on the water.
Yuck. Sorry, you've been busy. Work's been keeping you busy.
Yeah, we've just got. I feel like so I do mergers and acquisitions, and I just feel like that right now is this season of like everyone's coming out and being like, okay, well, 2022 is off to a good start, and now I want to close all my deals. Like January was my prep time. Now I'm getting really serious. So we just got a bunch, and then we're going on a family vacation next week. So it's one of those like tell them like, okay, if we want to get stuff done, we can do it this week. So of course tomorrow's the big day, in hopes I know I'll still be doing stuff while we're in Florida, but to minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah,
the key.
Listen, it's back. Work is back.
Oh, it's 100% back. Yeah.
Marv, are you feeling in your space like, has it gotten busier since January?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like what pandemic? Like everybody's going a million miles an hour. It's just nuts.
Well, a lot of people are now starting to roll back into the offices. So for offices that were stagnant and machines were kind of disassembled, and they're going to call and say, "Oh, we can't find Susie's computer." It's like, and I'm like, "What'd you do with it?"
Yeah.
That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem.
Can you?
So that, and now that all the companies that put off upgrades in 2020, now they're like, "Oh, we're a couple years behind, and Windows 11 is out, and but Microsoft's raising prices."
I know. Yeah, it's like it's reality setting in, and it's just kind of the perfect storm. We'll talk a little bit about that when we go. I've got some Woodford bourbon. I just went straight for the bourbon tonight.
There you go. Jumping right in.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, okay.
It's not going to help with the tiredness factor, though.
You're right. I literally have more bourbon in the house than I have beer at the moment, because over the last when we did it once in January and once in February, we did some bourbon tastings with the kids. So I picked up, it wasn't hard, but I picked up a few bourbons and had them available, and then we would taste 5 or 6 at a time, and little bits, I mean, enough, right? And so we go through and then we pair them and move them around and like, okay, what do you like? And how would we put the flavor profiles together? It was a lot of fun, but you only drink this much bourbon when you do that, right? And many of these bottles were new. So now I have here in the US are 750 milliliters, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have like 700 milliliters of bourbon for each one of those. So it's like, I was thinking, man, I'm gonna have to start plowing through this bourbon, get through it. So that
it's like your cigar stash, it just gets too big for the container. Like, well, I gotta get started getting through them.
Start smoking more.
Yeah, right.
So, so we're gonna go. It's funny how when you have an excess of it, you start choosing that just a little more regularly. Like, oh yeah, man, I'm out of milk for cereal. We got bourbon.
Jim's in a really good mood today at work.
I know. What is it about? But by noon,
something about Raisin Bran and bourbon.
By noon, he is out cold. We can't figure out what's going on over there with that guy. So I think I'll have for the rest of the year. I think I have. Although we've been talking about the next tasting will be rye. So. But I don't have a single rye. That means I've got to purchase some rye. Yeah. So it's like, maybe we should get through the stash. So Phil came over on Wednesday and we had a little happy hour out on the deck and he went right for the bourbon. And I said, pretty nice coming to a place, coming to your dad's place that has unlimited bourbon, isn't it? He's like, yep. So it was good. So we had a good time. Well, Marv, thanks for coming on tonight and hanging out with us. I know it's been an interesting busy couple months for you. I think you initially and we're going to talk about this more in just a second, but you kicked off your podcast and then had some health issues with your mom, and we hope she's doing well.
She is much better.
Good.
And we hope she'll be tested next week for the first full battery of tests since the treatment, and they'll see where her levels are and see if they need to adjust up or down. I haven't talked to her in a couple of days, so I don't know how she's been, but hopefully she'll, be on the track where they can downsize her stuff.
Good. Are you close? I mean, distance wise, are you close to her?
Well, about 2.5 hours.
Okay. So not too bad, but just enough.
Hey, she can't call me and say, hey, I need some bread. Can you bring it by?
Right.
But close enough that I better visit on the weekends.
Yeah. Well, or if something, if you need to be there, you can be there pretty quick, right? Type deal. So yeah, well, good. Well, we're hoping things continue to go well for her.
Thank
Going
you.
forward. Yeah, you bet. Okay. Well, let's get this show on the road. Mike, did you have anything we're going to talk about Marv's podcast, talk a little bit about that space. I think I'll revisit the busyness of it. Did you have anything you wanted to bring in tonight?
I did, but it doesn't really fit with everything else.
Oh,
so I was trying to rethink. I was going to go a truck route, but
well, we can still do that because I think Ed was saying he wanted to hear a little bit about what your truck, right? Yeah. I think he told me he wanted to hear.
Okay, well, we can go into that.
We can talk about that and then make a shift.
That's sure.
Okay, let me kick this thing off. Justin, good to see you. Justin, Joe, Ken, Brian, good to see you guys. And Justin made a good comment. He'd sent me some. Justin, I'm Bundaberg. That was terrible. So I don't know how. Although apparently I had a buddy who I've been listening to One Nation Under Whiskey, which is a podcast all about whiskey. The Single Cask Nation is the label that makes they buy casks and then they're bottlers, and so they find these kind of rare and special casks, that kind of stuff. And they got an Australian rum that was $150 a bottle, so it better be good at $150 bottle. So I looked online and then I went, I have too much bourbon.
I wonder, Jim, are your like interests seasonal? You went through the cigar thing. Is it going to be the YouTube rabbit holes of whiskey and bourbon podcasts, and that's gonna be the new thing.
Yeah, probably for a little while. Yeah, and the kids have kind of gotten into
I like it.
So,
Yeah, I'm very seasonal on mine too. Right.
Yeah.
I'm out of the router season, switching all my routers back from PFSense to Untangle. I go in seasons. That'll be next fall again. I'll reevaluate my router setup and
And I looked at, well, maybe we'll talk about this here when you talk about your truck. I've been looking at the solar generators again. It's kind of, with the sun coming back out, and you're kind of like, well, I can make some power this summer if I put some solar panels up and fed that into a generator, and then it could be my UPS too. So maybe we'll talk about that in the show. Let's not give it all away. Here we go. Let's do this thing. This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks show number 525, recorded on March 3rd, 2022. Here in Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a dry... Mike, I mean, it's been a while since we've had some rain, but I go outside and it just feels like we're in a desert. Everything's brown. If anyone started a fire, the whole state would burn down.
The grass is like crunchy, dead,
bad.
Yeah.
This is the driest I've ever seen it here, and it's just kind of nasty. I'm kind of looking forward to some rain kind of this weekend I think we got some rain and some snow coming here. But it's just been super dry. Marv, of course, you're in Orlando, right? In the Orlando Fort Lauderdale. It's close. It's all flat.
But it's our fall here. Our leaves are turning brown.
Yep, and then it just goes right back to summer, right? So, of course, we'll post the show with some show notes, and tonight that'll be important. Marv's going to talk about some of his new stuff that he's been doing. We'll, of course, include those links in the show notes out at theaverageguy.tv. Don't forget, you can join us now Saturdays noon Central for the premiere. So we'll put this as in a premiere mode on YouTube again on Saturday. If you want to watch it again, jump in the chat room, get some chat going. It's always kind of fun to do that. I'm always watching the Last Hour Cigar Authority while I'm chatting with you guys and doing that. And it's just a fun thing to do. So if you haven't been out to the site yet, go out to theaverageguy.tv/YouTube. That'll take you right to the page, and that's available noon Saturdays, and we'll premiere. We've been doing that as well. And then just a programming note, if you've been subscribed, and you may not even know this, but if you've been subscribed to Home Gadget Geeks through Podomatic, that was the original back, 10 plus years ago. We started on Podomatic, and this week I had done, you do some of those you guys will appreciate this. You do these trial versions of things, or they offered a special discounted rate and like $5 for a $50 service. You want to take it? And I said yes, and then last year I didn't cancel it, so they charged it $120 this time, right? And I was like, oh, and they wouldn't refund it last year. So I took my credit card off off the record and said, okay, at least they won't charge my credit card, right? And then should have sent a note to flag myself to downgrade the account, and I didn't. So they charged it again, even though it wasn't on record. Yeah, a little sketchy. So I contacted them.
Yeah,
a little sketchy, right, on that one. Even so, I contacted them, and they're like, "Oh, it's well within our policy. We warned you, and you didn't." And I said, "No, I don't think that's going to work that way." And we went back and forth. I was super nice to him on the emails. I'd always end the email with "Thank you for the refund," type thing. Just being, just kind of being that way. And in the end, they said, "No, we're not going to give you your money back." So I said, that's fine. I'll just dispute the credit. I'll just dispute it on my credit card. And I'm sure that my credit card immediately credited. It's in a dispute mode. Okay. All that being said, one, if you have these subscriptions, this is probably the time of the year to make sure that you know what you're doing and you've got them tracked in some way, right? Type thing. Because it's one of those things. I should have left myself a reminder. I've heard from several listeners who've said that every time they set up one of those, they also set up a calendar reminder to cancel that type deal. So it's just I'm terrible at that. But it's just too bad. So if you're on Podomatic, you might not know it, but you check your feed, because you would have gotten before this one, you would have got a note from me saying, get off of Podomatic, because we're moving. So I just don't want it to stop on you. I'm going to keep it around for a couple weeks or so, and then And we're talking about changing your podcast tonight with Marv. But if it just stops, I don't want it to stop on you. So just make sure you're subscribed to the regular feed that's out there. And if you have any questions, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. And never, ever use Podomatic. Ever. Under no circumstances are you ever allowed to use them again. Mentioned his name a couple times. Marv Bee is with us tonight, coming back in, brand new podcast. Marv, welcome back. Good to have you on Home Gadget Geeks.
Guys, thank you for having me. Sorry that we are 2 months behind.
No,
We were gonna be on before.
Yeah, no, and some family issues which you've taken care of, and that's great. We, but just good to kind of have you back. Catch us up. Last time we had you on, you were doing Pod Nuts Pro podcast, and then you've changed that. Talk a little bit about some of the changes that you've made to the podcast.
Yeah, so basically Podnuts Pro had been around for several years. I had been hosting it for 5 years. And there was a couple of things that it was time for a change. One, I was tired of trying to explain to people, what is Podnuts Pro? And the people that were deep in the trenches with the podcast when it started were fine, but I was trying to do things, grow the podcast, monetize the podcast, do some other things with branding. And so I was stuck with that name, and I was stuck with the network that it was a part of. And not that they were doing anything bad or wrong, but I always had to go through them to get things done. So I'm like, you know what? I think I've got the handle on this stuff. So I wanted to break away, do it myself. So I rebranded. It's basically the same show, but I've just changed the name. It's now called the IT Business Podcast. And we still do the same thing where we talk to other techs, we talk to business owners, we talk to vendors in the channel, and we share stories and tips. And our goal is to help people run their IT business better, smarter, and faster. Mm-hmm. But we're also trying to have it appeal to all IT professionals. So, a lot of the shows tended to focus on, high-end business or MSPs, the managed service sector. But I also wanted to appeal to solo technicians and techs that were working in a corporate space. So a lot of the things that we do are really the same. We might have a different twist on the tools, but for those of us that are doing business support, we're all trying to manage an Active Directory network and group policy stuff and protect our customers from ransomware and make sure they're backed up properly. So we're all doing most of the same things. So why not just talk to everybody?
What I love about you've been doing too is that, so I listened to the last one, right? Your latest episode just came out last night. Was the last night the one about?
Yes.
Yeah. So you had an attorney on. Now, is that a normal co-host for you?
Yes.
Okay. So he's an attorney. He did a fantastic job describing essentially, number one, MSAs, your master level service agreement, and then your SOWs, your statements of work, and how those connect and how you can make sure that, our clients reading them. Does it matter if they read the MSA? Can you just post it? Do they need to sign it? All of those questions. And then you really dove deep into the fiduciary duty rule being applied to MSPs, which I thought was fascinating. And I think even though I'm an attorney and I was fascinated from the attorney angle, what I love about what you did is I put myself kind of in the IT person's mind who is not a lawyer, not trying to think about that, but this is something they really need to know, right? This is something that's very important to them. And even if they don't manage that for their team, maybe they have a legal team, or maybe they're a small business and they are their own legal team, right? They are doing their own agreements. It's things that are outside the realm of the normal day-to-day for IT people, but that are extremely, extremely relevant and important. So I really like kind of that angle of, yes, it's still IT. That's geared towards anyone in this industry. Even at my business, if it was one of our IT people listening, I guarantee the next time they see the in-house counsel, like, hey, by the way, I heard about this. How are we doing that? Like, is that actually okay? Are we doing it the right way? Can we change the way we do it? So I love that angle that you take.
Well, it's one of those angles that most techs don't think about, especially if you're just starting out and say, hey, I'm doing this on the side, no big deal. I start supporting businesses. What if something happens?
Right.
You lose their data or they do get ransomware. They can come after you. But the bigger thing is a lot of times they'll take templates of agreements that they find online and I'll just, cut and paste my stuff into it. Well, it may not be specific enough to you or your state and even your city, because a lot of times cities have different rules and stuff. And if you're dealing with medical, there's the HIPAA laws that come into play. Banks have their FINRA laws. Lawyers all have their stuff that deal around discovery and how they're supposed to maintain court records. There's so many things out there when it comes to business. So what I'm trying to do is say, look, I'm not just going to talk tech with you. I'm going to talk business stuff with you too.
Yeah.
Your attorney, your accountant. A lot of techs don't deal with accountants. We have an accountant that comes on. We're going to have a couple of city officials on that talk about why you have to have a city license or an occupational license if you rent a building. Because if a client comes and drops off a computer and slips on your premise, you're responsible, not the landlord, you. So all things we need to think of.
It reminds me of like a local chapter that you would join for whatever industry you're in, and you would all gather and you'd have a presenter that speaks on a different topic, all related, but maybe not directly what you're doing, that helps you with every angle of your business, right? Because I loved the way that you guys talked about your MSA. So if you're an MSP or if you're an IT and you have agreements with your customers, historically those have been creatures of contract, right? It's contract law. Is it in the contract or is it not? If I put it in the contract and I said I'm going to do it, that's what I'm held to. And the line you guys went down was we're getting really close to having this other duty, this fiduciary duty, where even if it's not in the contract, should you have noticed something and did you have an obligation to tell them about it, right? Is kind of the idea. And so you're starting to get into this area where you can have a very well-intentioned MSP who thinks they're doing the best and they're abiding by their contracts and they think they're following all the rules, but unbeknownst to them, and now I think your guys' point was it's not this way yet, but it could be going this way, is they could have an obligation to their client that they didn't even put on paper and that they didn't realize. So yeah, I think those things are so important and so critical. And I think a lot of people, because I run into this in the financial advisor business, financial advisors are great at being advisors, but they are accidental business owners, meaning like they run this little firm and they're a great financial advisor, but they've never run a business. They're in this by accident. Like they're the head of this firm now. And especially as they start to grow it and they get employees and now they have IT systems in there and they have all these extra things. They grew it from them just being a financial advisor so I was kind of equating it to the industry I'm in, and it's very similar. And I would love it if someone had a podcast like yours for the financial services industry, right? Because I think there's a lot of good stuff that comes with just overall business ownership and what it means in all different areas.
Yep, it's a big thing to have, and hopefully others will, join and do that for you. Maybe you can do it.
There you go. Well, I love your rebranding too, because that really does tell me. I'll admit I was in that crowd. I didn't know what Podnuts Pro, what you guys covered or anything like that. So when you rebranded was when I kind of like, oh, okay. IT business podcast. I love IT, even though it's not my day to day. And that was kind of an intro. I knew right what it was from the branding. So I love your branding switch. It's very clear, relevant. The homepage kind of tells exactly what it is, jumps right into it. Really easy to navigate. Actually, I listened directly on your website on my phone. It's easy to find the link, click through, and I was actually watching the YouTube video, but I know that the audio is right below it. So your branding and website was super slick, super easy to use.
Yep, that's another thing I wanted to work on, was making it so that people, can find the podcast, can listen, and we're on most of the podcatchers, not all, but most.
Yeah.
And making it to where if you go search, now I've still got to get through my Google authority and rankings back up there because they're all gone. But being able to search for either Uncle Marv or IT Business Podcast should get you there.
Yeah. Well, I've always taken that for granted, being with Jim, I forget that he does like teaching podcasts on the weekends on one of those podcasts, because it's all about, can I find it and can I listen to it in the format I want to in an easily accessible place? And so for you guys both kind of do it the same way. On your post, there's the video, there's the Spreaker audio or whatever audio, version underneath. It's in every single podcatcher. You can get it anywhere, right? Like it's where I want, how I want it. Sometimes I want to watch the video. Sometimes I'm in the car. I just want to listen to audio. Doesn't matter, right? You guys, both the way you guys do it makes it easy to digest and to what's the word I'm looking for? To consume. Thank you. To consume. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yep. And that was a tip I learned from Jim and Dave. Have a website. You know, when people ask you, where's your podcast? Well, if you go to Apple and you do the search, no, just itbusinesspodcast.com.
100%.
Marv, did you keep all the back episodes? So if someone was subscribed, did it just change over for them, or how'd that work?
Yes. So I did import. I think I got the last 100 episodes. I couldn't get all of them.
Yeah.
But they're still on the original Podnuts Pro site. So that is still up and running. So people will find it. And if you listen to the last 3 or 4 of those episodes, I'm telling you, you can find it here. So people can switch over. But I've made it so I still have the podnutspro.com domain that redirects to IT Business Podcast. So hopefully if people go and click that link, they'll be redirected to the new link and go from there.
I noticed you kept,
sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I noticed you kept the numbering continuing on from the Podnuts Pro numbering. So this was episode 380 something. Was there any rationale behind that? I have my own theory of why you did it, but was there any rationale to it?
It was, again, the podcast, structurally didn't change. So I thought, you know what, why make people think I'm starting over 100%? I still have the previous episodes there. So I just kept the numbers, and I don't know that numbers matter anyway.
It lends credibility, I'll say. Like when so for me, I wasn't a past listener, but when Jim was talking about you and rebranding, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds really cool. Went out and checked it out. Seeing the number be in the hundreds, I'm like, oh, this guy he knows his stuff. He's been around, he's done it. This is going to be credible. This is going to be a well-polished machine. Sure enough, it was. Whereas not that I would have not listened if it was episode number 1, but it affects things. And I think even for sponsors and for people who want historic track record, those sort of things, if you're trying to monetize it and grow it, I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I expected to see episode number 1 back in January. I was like 380 something, that's interesting. And of course I just scroll back, I'm like, okay, that's where Podnuts Pro left off, and it was interesting. I like that decision. I think it was a good choice. Jim, when you've rebranded, have you kept the number? Have you reset your numbers? Like, because Home Gadget Geeks used to be
Home Tech.
Home Tech, thank you.
Yeah, Home Tech.
Did you reset the numbers?
100 and some we changed.
No,
kept them the same. Kept them the same. Okay. So 525 goes all the way back. You can, I think that even the short numbering is HT in those days. So HT001 takes you back to the very first episode, if you want to go do that. But no, Marv and I spent a bunch of time talking about this rebranding and how you should go about doing it, and just some ideas. And so Marv, I'm glad you got through it successfully. It looks like it worked. Everything is up and running. And are you getting any feedback from your audience? And what kind of feedback are you getting?
So I initially looked for feedback before I did it. I wanted to make sure, hey guys, I'm thinking about doing this. I had a core group of listeners that I had kind of taken under my wing. Anytime I wanted to do something big, I reached out to this group first. And of course, they were all like, oh yeah, sounds great, fantastic. They love the new direction. And then after I made the change, I even got more from other people that noticed it and said, oh, this is much better.
Good. Yeah, well, that's good. And then what are some topics coming up? Like, what do you have? What do you got on the docket? What are you hoping to cover here in future episodes?
Well, I mentioned an accountant. We have a lady in our industry that specializes in doing books for IT companies. So she's going to come on. It's probably going to be in a month or so, but we're going to have a few different shows on tips on how to set up your books, how to get through tax season, all of those types of things. So we're going to do some mini series with some of those people. Bradley Gross couldn't do it this year because he's doing so much traveling, but we're going to have, a legal series at some point down the road. We're going to have the money series with the accountants. Tomorrow, I'm actually doing a recording with a lady from a firm called Defendify, and that is a company that does cybersecurity training. So they help businesses and IT companies to educate employees, and they've got vulnerability testing that you can do for their website and their IP addresses on their firewalls. They will provide end-user training, phishing attack simulations. They put out posters and videos for employees, and it tracks whether or not the employee actually watched the video, so that a office manager or HR person can go back and say, okay, you're not keeping up with your training and that sort of a thing. So those are the immediate shows we've got coming up. We're probably going to be doing once a month where we'll do a group meeting and I'll have either 2 or 3 other techs, and we're just going to share stories. The show before this one was with the guy, Matt Rainey, who runs a company out in Louisiana. And we just shared stories. Hey, here's what, is happening with our customers. He talked about 2 things that he's run across is one is people in Outlook keep hitting the archive button and somehow archiving mail. So we found a registry edit that blocks them from hitting that archive button. And he found, and this has been around for a while, but it's just something that if you don't do it, you don't know it. When people are getting some of these Windows 10 updates and the computer restarts, it's asking them to sign in with a Microsoft local account instead of a local account. So there's a group policy setting or a registry hack to block that. So we talked about things like that. And that's not necessarily business. That can be for anybody that doesn't want to.
Well, any small, medium-sized business that, I mean, these are struggles. You've got a smaller IT group. You've got, you might have hired an MSP to do all that work for you, right? Or to do most of it, to do the heavy lifting. And there's just so many changes happening very, very quickly. Ransomware has just become a huge issue, right? And where we kind of used to make fun of people who would get a virus or whatever, it's serious business now. And one of those kinds of things can wipe you out, right? Yeah. I mean, so it's just not listen, when we had Melissa and some of those other viruses, 10 years ago, whatever they were, well, ha. I mean, yeah, some of them, but man, it's serious business today, right? Do you have to deal with that very much in what you're doing? Do you have some of your folks that have gotten ransomware or gotten?
Yeah, it's huge.
Don't mention any of them by name to protect the guilty.
Well, yeah. So luckily, I haven't had any recently, but I did have a law firm that got hit twice, and it was before ransomware really got big in the last 3 to 4 years. So it was kind of still new, and luckily, we had backups in a way that once we detected the ransomware, and even I think one was 3 or 4 hours later before we realized what was going on. But we simply had them all log off. We found the offending machine, cleaned it up, and were able to restore their files from the previous, 4 hours that were missing. So it wasn't horrible, but it's just getting bad to where it's unintentional when it happens. People are doing it by accident, and that ransom people have gotten so smart and how they've crafted them. And so I have a lot of law firms that work in real estate, and the title companies are having a huge thing with people sending an email that looks legit saying, hey, when you send the next payment, can you make sure it goes to this account and this bank? Here's the bank information. Here's all that. And I've got a couple of people that the other side has sent money to the wrong account. So it's getting quite hard to deal with.
Listen, I'm deleting legitimate emails because I'm like, yeah, no, that's not and it was legitimate, and just because I'm not trusting anything, I kind of, if I get things via email, it kind of goes back to the Podmatic thing. I think that probably came in and I thought they were warning me like, hey, your payment's coming up. And I was just clearing email out, and I probably deleted it. So I've gone the opposite way where I have a problem. I get so much of it and I delete so much of it. I am sure I'm deleting legitimate emails in the process. So it's a real deal. We alluded to this in the beginning of the show, but Marv, from an IT business standpoint, do you get that sense that we're back? Like we're back. It's full speed, right? I mean, are you there yet, or do you think we're getting close?
Well, we're not full speed, but I think people are trying to be full speed, whether it's in a hybrid mode where some people are going to work remote permanently. But a lot of my companies are trying to mix and match. So they're trying to make, most of their staff come in the office, even if it's on a staggered schedule or alternating days. But they are trying to say, look, we gotta get cranking again. So that is ramping up now that the mask mandates are supposedly dropping everywhere, even though they're not. people are, going out and about in a much more aggressive way. So they're expecting things to be done and handled. And, by golly, if my computer's not working, I need you here to fix it, mask or no mask.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just get this. I was in the office today and we're still maybe 25% are coming in. So it's still pretty light, but I just get that feeling from a work perspective. And Mike, you contacted me the other day and you're like, dude, things are busy. I mean, this is for me, it just feels like it's 2019 again. And we are, because it was nuts, right? Right before the pandemic started. Are you getting, Mike? Are you getting that feeling? You sensing that too? Just
100%. Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of companies who have been historically, waiting for people to come back. One person I was talking to, they said, okay, so companies are in this weird predicament where they don't allow work from home, and everyone's like, oh, well, there are companies around that do, so they leave for that. But then there's also too much away from the office, you kind of just lose that connection to employees a little bit, and then leaving's a lot easier for people. So jumping around, they don't have that deep connection to the people they work with and the culture. So yeah, it's interesting. We came back pretty early from ours, but then we actually, the past few months we went back to the mask mandate with Omaha, the way they did it. It's been interesting, but our IT department has been rock stars. They actually got the biggest round of applause at the last quarterly meeting, just because all through the pandemic and now they are just Johnny on the spot. Because when everyone went away, our company's a big, we say we're a technology company first, and even though we're in financial services, and we kind of lived up to that because we didn't really skip a beat going away. And it's because our IT department, even though they're small, they are just dynamite. They're responsive. You get a response to your ticket within a few minutes. And so they did a really, really good job. And I think with everyone coming back to the office, they've actually been relieved because it's a lot easier than having to remote in to everyone's different homes and everything like that. So they've, I think, enjoy having everyone back.
Tony says my wife's company decided that they didn't need an office, and I think this has happened to a few during the pandemic, and sold it. Everyone's 100% virtual. And, I think even though, I was in the office, it's 25%. Let's just say we have about 25 to 50%. We are busier than we've ever been. So people are figured out home or at work is irrelevant. The hybrid work, whatever we're doing, we're back to full speed, maybe more with hybrid, right? And so it's crazy. I mean, I remember how it felt in 2020 as it slowed down. I had to speed some things up to create more media for folks. And then we had a little lull, right? That fall of 2020 and spring of 2021 kind of felt reasonable for the first time in a long time, for me anyways. And then it's just been slowly cranking up. Marv, do you feel like in your own work, do you feel like, are you feeling that pickup in what you're doing?
Yeah, there's a pickup. Now, IT wise for me, it didn't change much. Most of what I do is remote. So that didn't affect me. What did affect me is what Mike alluded to earlier, having to support people in different places. Yeah. So employees on the go, working at home, and they decide, oh, this laptop isn't working, I need to switch over to this one. If you've got them set up with a secure VPN with, client-side software, you got to reinstall it on a new machine. So it got a little tricky there for a while. We've got customers that are trying to work remotely, but the principals of the office may not feel that they can be on top of their employees. So we've installed a lot more employee monitoring systems so that employers can look and see, okay, yeah, I saw that you logged in remotely, but are you actually working?
Yeah. Productivity tracking, not employee monitoring. That's a little spooky, but productivity tracking. So it's the same thing, right? Sounds a little bit better.
And then the other part of that is, as companies are trying to ramp back up, some of them didn't do anything for a couple of years. So now they've got to play catch up.
Right.
And they want to, do the upgrades that they didn't do before. And it's tight, inventory's not really there.
Yeah. Well, now, like I got issued a brand new laptop in February of 2020. So I came back from London. My current laptop wasn't working very well. They gave me a new one. In fact, it was so new when we were kind of sent home. That first time I tried to log in, it wouldn't log in, and I had to go in I had to physically go in masked up, and that was weird in those days, right? Because we were just starting to do it. They had to reset some things. So, but then you think, well, that laptop's now 2 years old. Like all of a sudden, it's 2 years old. We had been on a 2-year cycle. I think they're going to go to 3 because of this, because of the supply chain issues. But even if I wanted a new laptop right now, I'm probably waiting 3 to 6 months maybe to get one, right?
I would suggest waiting because prices are up.
Right.
I've got a client that's trying to move into a new building, and they went through the whole lumber deal where prices were up 200, 300% for that, and so they got hit with those things. My cable guy, went to go in and install new cabling for them, and he couldn't find cable, Cat 6 cable for the longest time.
Yeah,
really.
And then when he did, they used to be, I forget what the price he said was, but it was this price. And, I actually found the Cat 6 cable for him online for like $150, a box. And I think that was double the price of what he quoted. So it was, trying to adjust for all of that as well.
Copper's a real deal. I was at Menards. This was a couple weeks ago now, but they have a big sign that says, guys, copper prices is 4 times what it was. Just be patient with us, and it was almost like the service manager for the electrical area had just gotten frustrated with people yelling at him about how expensive things were. And that all happened when I was doing wiring here. Now, fortunately, I didn't, I created a generator connect for the house so that I can hook my generator up on the outside and then run the power on the inside. Fortunately, I didn't have to run a ton of wiring for that, right? The components, the plugs, and even even like 12.2 or 14.2 wiring, even that's double what it was before. You go get a spool, double, triple the price. So it's I think, Marv, to your point, we're starting to think if we have companies now saying, okay, come back, it's not as easy as just coming back into the office because you've got old equipment. You may have equipment that hasn't been signed into in a year or two. That's that's fallen off the network, right?
It hasn't been signed into. It hasn't shown up on my dashboard for 400 days. People there's still Windows 7 machines out there because they had pushed back Windows 7 to Windows 10 upgrade so long. So now they've got Windows 7 machines. I just went to go install Office 365, a new version on one of those. Couldn't install it.
No, it's gonna be weird because it's this weird 2-year window where, like, it's almost a bubble in itself where you're in it, and then there's like almost a time dilation field. You go back into the office, and it doesn't feel like in some ways it's been 2 years because the 2 years was so different, right? And then you're like, but you know what? It's been 2 years.
And in computer years, it's a very long time in computer years.
Patches, updates, right? Some of those kinds of things. And even remembering in some cases, and I know you know this, in the small to medium-sized business space, you might have had a technician that was relying on knowledge of the way things worked in the building, like that never got documented or whatever. And that technician's either gone, or even if they're still there, they're like, I honestly don't remember what we,
because they didn't write it down. No documentation.
Right. Yeah. And they're like, how did I do this?
Yeah.
Like,
I document as much as possible. Actually, I've had 2 things in the last week where an office manager asked me if I had documentation on a Mac that was shipped back from their office to New York. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
why would I have that? But we did.
Oh, really?
We had it because I was the one that picked it up and then had it taken to the UPS store. So we actually had that.
Yeah. Good on
and then
good
another
on you
one,
for keeping that.
Another one, we subcontract for a company, and they called me to say, hey, we need to go out and have the Comcast modem restarted because they're having wonky internet. Well, when I did, their entire network went down, and they thought the Comcast was just their backup, and they had AT&T Ethernet as their primary. And I said, well, no, you don't. And so the guy's like, oh, Well, do you have our AT&T circuit information so we can put in a ticket? I'm like,
Yeah.
why would I have your information? So,
no, I don't. I don't. Yeah, there's going to be some memory things. Stuff has been allowed to sit for a while,
yeah.
and with the turnover being so high. Brian says in the chat, he says, I do appreciate more of the natural hybrid approaches that have been happening. When companies go back to in person, it certainly isn't like it was before 2020. And I think Mike Carson's done a really good job of this, of just making sure everybody has what they need right in that area, right?
First, I would, yes, 100%. Like, for example, yesterday, Emmett had been sick all night, so he stayed home, and I just worked from home. And like before, you had to like justify this, right? Like, sorry, I got to work from home. I will be working, all this stuff. And if you need me, it's just like, no one asked. I just, teamed someone so they knew, like, hey, I'm home today. Kids home. Like, okay, cool. And then they pinged me as usual. It was just like any other day of work, right? And I love that. To Brian's point, companies understand now that it works. People are working. I'm not a fan of the productivity trackers. I don't know. That's just like, for me, I feel like managers need to have a better finger on the pulse if work is getting done, not done, if it's quality or not quality. And if it is getting done and if it's quality, I could care less how you did it and when you did it. I understand that things come up. If you took 4 hours in the middle of the day to go to a kid's soccer game, and then, you got your work done from 10 to 12, because that's when you're really productive at night, go for it. That's kind of my thing. And so as far as I know, I don't have any productivity tracking on my computer. But yeah, I agree with Brian, completely natural now. And I think most companies are that way. If they're requiring people to come back, they're more understanding of the work from home needs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. It's the new reality. And, just yesterday, my oldest came over. He's just changed jobs. So he'd been working in a garage, at a place that fixes cars. He manages that. And then he changed to he's now working kind of, in a staffing company. And it was funny where he came over and he was logging into my network and then trying to get into his VPN. And this is the first time he'd been away from his network to get into the VPN. And then, so he's doing dual factor with his phone and it's not working. And so we're trying to get that and troubleshoot it. And it was interesting. And Marv, to your point from earlier, he's brand new to VPNs and he's brand new to this kind of space. And so, is I became his tech support there, helping him, just kind of like, hey, so have you thought about this? Maybe you need to take your phone off the network that it's on, because he attaches to my network when he gets over here on his phone. Maybe that's not good. Maybe take that off. And eventually we got him all set up and got him on his VPN. So, and I thought, Phil, this is good that you figured this out now, because now you can move around a little bit and be a little bit more flexible and know how to get all those things attached. But Marv, I mean, that's VPNs have, I am sure there have been some pretty big changes just in infrastructure and the way things work, and VPN companies getting their software. They're more relied on today than they ever have been, right?
They are. And the double-sided sword of that is people have now seen commercials, get your own personal VPN.
Yeah.
So people are buying their own and then having it conflict with the companies that they're trying to connect to, and trying to, educate people. Well, you can't use that VPN when you're using this VPN. Yeah. When you go to Starbucks, it's a hard technology to explain.
Yeah. Well, ironically, the average consumer probably needs their own VPN less than they've ever needed it before, because of a lot of security that's built into a lot of the stuff that they have. It's not a bad idea to have one, right?
Yeah, but that's not what they're getting from the commercials.
No, right. Right on. They're hearing all
it's on the TV.
Danger,
it must be true.
They're here, and the VPN companies have gotten very savvy in that space, right? They are doing a nice job of promoting themselves in that.
Private internet access. I'll just say that PIA has just been, they're one of the first. They've stayed. They don't log. If anyone's looking for like a true, just secure VPN that has been tried and true since the beginning of time, PIA, private internet access, is a good one. They didn't get into this race, right? Like there's this race of advertising, getting people on free. PIA is not free, but it's not expensive either. But it's just they're not selling your stuff, and I like them.
I've actually just been using for the last 2 years the Bitdefender stuff. That I bought the Bitdefender box, and then the VPN's $30 a year or whatever. It's worked great. When I need it, I can get it on any desktop. I can get it on my phone. It's worked out pretty well. I don't use it probably as much anymore. I'm just not as concerned anymore, but maybe I should. So, good reminder. Marv, anything? Well, let me say this, anything else, but congratulations on getting all of that. Listen, it's no small task to rebrand a podcast and to kind of keep it intact, to keep your listeners intact, to do all those things. So we do wish you the best of luck as folks come over. The reason I wanted to celebrate this with you is because I think my audience is a perfect audience for you. Like this is exactly, most of my listeners are IT business people. So if you haven't subscribed to it, head out, IT Business Podcast, super easy to remember. And it makes sense. itbusinesspodcast.com.
Yep.
But Marv.
And there was a couple of people that had put some comments in the chat about, networking and Active Directory and Open Directory. And those are the types of discussions that we have. And I'm trying to get more of so that, it's not just about the big MSPs or the big IT companies. A lot of us, I started out, on my own. I walked out of my computer store and started working on the road. So I know the process and, still here 25 years later and hope to, keep on trekking. So that's what I'm trying to do is give back to the community and help others. And I can still learn. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the last couple of years that I've gotten from listeners and have said, hey, have you thought about this? Thank you very much.
Yeah. And guests. That's
guests.
I've tried to quit Home Gadget Geeks. It's like a bad marriage. I've tried to quit this at least every 6 months. For Mike, you've heard me.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I go, I can't quit it because I just learned too much.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's so helpful to me. And apparently it's helpful to you because you're still listening at this point, whether you're in your car or you're listening, you're live and you're listening, or however you're listening to us. You're still getting something out of it. So you're hanging around. I don't know, there's 400 or 500 of you that download this every week and listen to it. So it's working for me. But Marv, I'm glad you were able to make the jump. And I'd encourage everyone, one more time, itbusinesspodcast.com. Go out there, subscribe to it, give it 3 to 5 episodes, see if it's something that you can add into your rotation, figure out a way to listen to it. I know we're not driving as much anymore, so that gets a little bit harder, but get it in your rotation.
And if you don't like it after 3 to 5, check yourself and listen 3 to 5 more.
Check yourself.
I like it. Well, and we'll continue to have, because Marv's a gadget guy too, so we'll continue to have him back.
Well, I was going to say, before you kick me off,
I want you to stay. You're not going anywhere.
Okay.
I just was going to close this segment.
Had that podcaster sound, feel.
No, you're not going.
You're out of here.
Closing this segment. We were going to talk about something else, but go ahead. Before I was going to kick you off.
Well, because I was going to say, I've learned from you guys too. So I never thought that I would be listening to a gadget show. I'm just like, that's not me. I'm not putting up stuff in my house. My two big gadget things at the house are my TV and my Roku. But I've added some stuff. I've got Wi-Fi there. I've got a network there. I've got some other stuff. But we purchased a TV.
Oh.
And I remember you guys a few weeks ago having this TV conversation.
We did.
And so I did my research. I kind of went back and stuff, and I bought a Samsung Q70A 75-inch.
Is that the QLED?
QLED.
Oh man, you went with the Cadillac.
Wow. Well, and I really wasn't the one that pushed it. My wife pushed it because the TV we had before was only a 55.
Only. Yeah.
And she thought we needed to go 85. And I'm like,
woo,
dear, I don't think we need to go that big. I was 65 to 70 was where I was hoping to be. but we
Dude,
got a good price.
Yeah,
on it.
that's more than wife acceptance factor.
On it.
That's more than wife acceptance factor. That's like wife driving the purchase factor. That's pretty great.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with tech. She's just like, there's big TVs. Why don't we have the biggest?
Can she come talk to my wife, please? I think we need to get our wives together because I think my wife needs to. My wife's like, oh no, like my phone works. I'm like, no, it's not big enough. Like, come on.
Marv, did you order at big box store? Did you
actually? So here's the thing. The funny thing is, we were at BJ's, and that's what kind of got us all on
BJ's?
this path.
BJ's is like a big box electronics store.
It's Costco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they had them, and they were cheap. And I said, well, we don't want cheap. And we started going through specs, and she's like, well, for $1,000 we can get this. And I'm like, okay, let's check ourselves. Let's, go through. So we went back and did some research, and I'm like, QLED is the one. I like Samsung's brand. It works with all the stuff. And so she's like, okay, so we got it. We ordered it. So it was a box store, but through Amazon.
Okay.
So it took a week to get here because it had to go freight.
Yeah.
So we finally got it, hooked it up today.
Nice.
And my wife's like, ooh, that's big. And so I said, yes. So we got everything hooked up, turned it on. The sound is horrible.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Christian warned you of that when we talked about TVs. He said, you can't go with the speaker on the TV. They sound like they were, dropped on the ground. Somebody poured water on them, they stomped on them, and then they installed them in the
speakers.
TV.
All about how much air you can move, and there's just not a lot of air you can move in those super thin new TVs.
Yeah.
So now tonight, after I finish here, I've got to go on the quest for a sound bar.
There you go.
Which we have a Bose, sound bar from 12 years ago. So it's the Bose with the woofer, but you have to turn it on if you want to use it. So we're looking for one that automatically comes on with the TV. The Samsung models that they recommend, start at $429 and go up from there. So I'm like, maybe I'll ask the Gadget Geeks about a sound bar.
I would. It's another thing of you went all out on the TV. I would say either I would go out on sound. I actually think sound's even more important than the picture. People notice sound. Picture looks good and size is good, but I wouldn't skimp out.
Okay.
I do. We were going back to liability earlier, and I'm getting kind of worried about. I manage all the home networks for a lot of our executives at work, and so you go in and help them. And one of them is really big into home theater, and he actually, I had, Sonos. Some people love it, some people hate it. He has the Sonos. I think it's the Beam sound bar. One of his TVs. It is hands down the best sound bar I've ever heard. If you're going sound bar route, it's fantastic. And the great part about what he did was he started with the sound bar, and then he added 2 wireless Sonos, just small speakers in the back. And so you can add on to it, right? Then it's not just that. And then he can add a woofer. So like he kind of grew as he kind of figured out, because he had just moved into this house, what he wanted. So that was kind of the cool thing about Sonos, is you can kind of piece it all together. But I have made the mistake of going cheap on sound bars, and it was almost no better than the TV, right? It's like you can get a $150, $200 sound bar. It's going to sound like $150 or $200 sound bar. So I don't know if you have that nice of a TV, I'd go big.
Okay. I was looking at another Bose.
And Bose are going to be fantastic.
They've got the Bose. There's a Bose TV sound bar. They're very basic, is $279. I'm thinking, okay, maybe that may be one, but I don't, I'm going to have to either go somewhere and listen to them, or, get some experienced people to say, nope, here's what you got to do. Because I've looked at Sonos before. You're right. There's that love-hate thing.
There is,
with them. With Bose, it's
they're
usually, they're too expensive. Right.
Yeah. I think Bose is good quality to sound, performance-wise. I think they do really well. So you were saying the big issue with your current one is that they don't turn on at the same time?
Right. And that's the whole thing. I mean, it's not that it's a big deal, but it also, I think that the older technology doesn't match up well with the TVs. So for instance, when we turned ours on, we got that, booming sound, but it still didn't sound great. If that
How are they
sense.
connected? Are you connected via HDMI or optical or?
Optical.
Okay. Does it have HDMI in on your soundbar? Is
Well,
that an
that's
input option?
those aren't a sound bar. So the Bose that we
those
got
ones?
were the two separate speakers
Oh, okay.
and the woofer, and there's
Okay.
just a controller module. So
Does the controller have HDMI or is it just optical?
I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. I've never.
Okay.
We've always had it hooked up with the optical.
Because there's I'm gonna mess up the name. I think it's C-Arc or it's ARC, right? There's an audio return channel that can go down, and then whatever there's another standard that controls the sound bar from the TV. So when you power on the TV, if the TV is sending volume up and volume down commands, it's sending it through the HDMI cable down, and all those connect. So I know that's been a lot of people use HDMI compared to optical because you can send data back. So that would solve your issue of turning it on and off and volume up, volume down, and all of that just going to the TV.
Okay, we saw that, and I just assumed that was a fairly recent technology because I never heard that term. Again, my previous TV's from 2010.
Okay. No, yeah, it's been around for a while, I would say. I think that technology's been pretty. I mean, I think I got my sound bar, which does all of that. It's a Samsung sound bar. It's one of the cheaper ones, but not too cheap. I got that maybe 7 years ago, and it has all of that in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marv, go back 524, which was 2 weeks ago with Christian. You know, we had him on talking about his home theater setup. Once he gets past the TV selection, I think we spent a bunch of time talking about sound.
That's probably about the time I tuned out. So.
Might have been. Well, you did the right thing. You listened to the TV part.
Right.
So now go back and listen for that. You know, just it's probably 20 minutes in. I'm going to say maybe 25. Go in and find where we start talking about his AVR, right?
Okay.
That's kind of the sound setup. And there'll be some things, listen, there's some things in there I didn't understand, but work your way through them. It'll make more sense as you get it. Look up some things on Amazon, kind of go through those pieces. But to Mike's point, that's right. You're going to kind of want it HDMI controlled at this point going, because you always think like, why would I hook up HDMI through my the
audio?
The video's not going. Well, no. It's for the audio.
Yeah.
Like that's
and for the commands that go back and forth.
Right. The sound. That's Go ahead.
If you don't want to go that route too, on my other TVs, so I'm an NVIDIA Shield user, love the Shield, but I think a lot of the devices out there do this now where your remote for whatever box you're using can also control every single device. So my NVIDIA Shield remote, it sends the IR blast to the TV to turn that on, and it sends an IR blast to my sound bar to turn that on. When I turn volume up and volume down, it IRs to the sound bar. Like though it just that one remote, and it's just smart. Like, and I think Apple TV does the same thing. I'm not sure on Roku. I think Roku does, but I think you can only have a TV and then it controls the Roku. I don't know if it can do both. So something else to go think about.
Well, what's weird is this Samsung controller has controlled everything so far.
The remote, their remotes are pretty good. Yeah.
So it came up and it went through the setup really quick, and it's like, okay, we found these devices. Do you want to use them all? Yeah. I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't turn on and off your soundbar, huh?
Well, no, and I'm thinking that's because one, either I didn't have it on when we were going through the setup, or two, it's too old.
Yeah, it could be it
with that technology.
It's possible, or you just don't have the right connectivity.
Right.
To it. It's not.
I'll check and see if it's got the HDMI thing in it.
Or on that remote, you can even go in and add a sound device, and you can, like, if it says I don't find one, do you want to add it manually? Say yes, and then because a lot of times it's checking for HDMI. Hey, is there something on HDMI that I can control? And if your device is too old or not connected by HDMI, it might still offer you the availability to do the IR code, the old school. Like if you got an old school universal remote where you have to plug in the IR
the numbers. Yeah.
So it'll do that. That's what the NVIDIA Shield does, because it doesn't see my sound bar at all, but I just tell it I have one. It's like, oh, what brand? And did the volume go up now? Did the volume go up now? And I say, yes. Okay, we have the code for it. Here you go. And it works.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you. This is the best day ever. Like we did a podcast and then on TVs, and then you bought a TV. That is so great.
I'm telling you though, 75 is big.
Yeah,
that's really big.
That is big.
Yeah. That is big.
But the picture,
that's redesigned the whole living room big.
How far are you from the TV?
We can't get far enough back. I think we're that space is only, I think it's 22 feet.
Okay.
It's essentially VR goggles now.
Yeah.
Like it's like wearing a set.
Yeah,
VR
it's
headset.
like, okay, what happened on this side? I get
There's calculus involved.
You
now.
watch
You're
that
like,
side,
what's
I'll
the
watch this
distance
side.
to
You know,
it?
you tell me
Yeah.
if they score over there, and I'll tell you if they score over here.
Picture in picture is like a whole, like it's just a TV. It's like a regular TV. The
Yeah.
picture in picture. Yeah. Well, you've got some. Like I said, go back and listen to the back half of that episode, and Christian talks a little bit about sound and then lighting. Like now, you don't have to do lighting right away, but just you're gonna have to kind of think about like, what do I want to do? Christian talks a little bit about the mood lighting and some of those.
So there was this thing called ambient mode,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh, I ain't doing that. Because that looked like it would do all of that mood changing based on your. I'm like, oh, that's too much.
Yeah, based on what you're
too much.
watching. And then the other thing you want to think about is, do you need backlighting to the TV? I mean, this thing is so big, you might want to put some backlighting behind it that comes on either when the TV's off because it looks cool, or it might be helpful to have some of that lighting on while you're watching it from a visualization perspective. So.
Well, first we have to figure
time.
out. Yeah, we've got a bunch of
time.
stuff. So it's still sitting on our console, on our credenza, because it came with the feet.
Yep.
Mhm.
We've got a big white empty wall behind it that we can mount it.
Yeah.
So the wife's like, should we mount it? I'm like, I don't know. So we've got to think about all that. And then, of course, if you mount it, you've got to do the thing with the cables coming down.
Yep.
The lights.
One thing at a time, my friend. One thing at a time. Just tackle, like, enjoy it. You'll want to calibrate it at some point as well. We talk about that towards the end of the show. You'll want to get it calibrated so you're getting all the right colors that are in there. But it's a whole new. You've entered in a whole new world of goodness and love and acceptance. So
Like the same advice you gave me, Jim, when I upgrade all the components in my Unraid box. I had all this power now. You're like, just enjoy it. I was trying to add all this stuff. You're like, just enjoy it for a bit. Just let it be a project. Don't rush.
You know, watch some of your favorite. Watch some of your favorite shows that you know, because that's big. Like that is really huge. You're gonna really enjoy it. So good. You did a good job on that one, Marv. Good
right.
work. And now you're gonna listen. Now you're gonna have some. We'll have to have you back in a couple months as you've worked through all these gadget decisions that you're going to have to make with this thing.
Well, yeah, right? I got $1,000 in accessories to buy now.
You do. Yeah, you do. Yeah. It's just not the TV anymore. Like it's not, it's like, I bought a TV and now I'm done. No, you got speakers and lighting and, all those things. Remotes.
Well, the saving grace is I have time because we just spent $3,000 on a fridge. So,
did you get a smart one or just a regular? Does it?
Do you want to hear the story?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. What'd you get?
So when we bought our house and we walked around and did everything, we got into the kitchen and the fridge was tall. And we thought, holy cow, we have a huge fridge. And it was a GE monogram. So it was a counter depth fridge. But when you open it up, it's almost a normal fridge. The top 12 inches were just all motor.
Oh, okay.
But it was built. It was one of those built-in fridges. So the cabinets were custom built around it. And we thought, well, we'll get it checked out at some point. And so now here we are in year 8 of the home, and it just decides to die. And it died late on a Thursday. And we have people coming to visit for the weekends. We got to get a fridge.
Yeah. Do you have a backup fridge at all, or is it this the only fridge in the house?
Well, we have a fridge in the garage, but it was full.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and what's funny is we have a fridge here at the office. So we're carting stuff from the house to the office.
Right.
So in the meantime, I get on to try to find a repair tech. And I call GE first and tell them what the fridge is. And they're like, oh, well, that has to be a certified GE tech. We can't just send a regular tech. So this was Thursday night. We won't have a tech available till Wednesday. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, are there any other local companies that that you can recommend? And so she found 2. We called them and both of them were like, yeah, we don't work on GE anymore. And we certainly don't work on the GE monograms. So
apparently you're not the first person who's called about this.
Yeah. So then it's like, okay, we just got to, if we want a fridge, we got to go get one. So I start looking around to see what's available. You can't find any of those fridges in a local store.
No.
They're all custom ordered.
Yep.
We found a Lowe's that actually had several in the store.
Really?
So we drove to Lowe's and looked around, and we found one that we liked, and it was good. It was Bosch. But all the fridges that are counter depth and tall, like 72 inches tall, they're all expensive. So we get that. And then so $3,000.
Oh yeah,
on a fridge.
Yeah. Is this, like, go back to my original question? Is it a smart fridge? Did you get?
It's not. It's just your basic big fridge. It had a water line, but we don't have a water line in our house, and so we didn't hook that up.
Right.
And she didn't. We had to go through it. She didn't want a side by side.
Right.
So we had to get the double doors with the fridge, the freezer on the bottom.
Yep.
And we got the stainless steel and such, certain things. But it is smart in the sense where it's got a bunch of internal controls. It actually has temperature controls on the trays for the produce.
Oh, nice.
And all of
that's
that.
cool.
So you can set all of that. You can
Yeah.
set it for fruit or vegetables or whatever.
Yep.
It's got other temperatures. It's got the alarm. It's got a bunch of gadgets that I haven't looked at yet.
Yeah. Nice.
So
you spent some money lately.
Yeah, this was just not a good.
The money's just flowing out of there. Well, the reason I ask is because I just saw this new fridge where they've put weight sensors on the bottom of the fridge, so the feet are also weight sensors now. And so there's a camera or there's something on top of the fridge, and when you pull an item out, it recognizes what item you've pulled out, and then so you pull out the milk, and because we've always wondered, like, how does it know when you've run out of milk? Like, right? Well, it weighs it, so it knows its weight when you pull it out. It senses that. It says, "Oh, that's the milk." You pour the milk, you put it back in. It does the diff, and then goes, "You have this much milk left," or whatever that's on there. And so, it was just one of those, like, oh, we're getting, because this was gimmicky when it first started, but I think now we're getting pretty close to that weird Amazon awareness. You go to an Amazon store and you can just take stuff off the shelf and walk out, right? I think some of that technology is making its way into the fridges, and with the weight kind of creepy stuff, like, there's some, this may actually work. I was skeptical when they first came out with these fridges, but I think now the smart fridges may actually work, and then be able to build your shopping list for you, basically, like, hey, you're going to need these things. In my case, and in yours too, we actually need that technology in all of our fridges, because if you have it in one and you have a second fridge that you're keeping extra stuff in, you want to know that stuff is there, right? You need to. So that gets really expensive, and I think that was like a $5,000. That one I was looking at was like a $5,000 fridge.
Yeah, I didn't want to get that smart. I don't want people knowing what I
can be dumb. I can be dumb for a while.
Yeah.
So So it was asked in the chat, what seems to be the most reliable brands? It's funny. So when I did my research, now I had to start. Let me go back. So this wasn't the first big appliance purchase. We had to do a dishwasher about 6 months ago. And I ended up going with Bosch. And Bosch right now seems to be consistently at the top. So if there's a top 5 list, 3 of the top 5 are Bosch. And we wanted quiet when it came to dishwashing. Bosch was the quietest. And so that's what we went with, because I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I don't need cheap. I want it to last. And if I've got to spend extra money so that it lasts, let's do that. Yeah. So that's what we did. And we did the same with the fridge. And we looked at all the other ones out there. We looked at, we did look at GE, because that's what we were used to. We looked at Whirlpool, and we looked at some of the others, but the reviews just weren't that good. And Brian also said he usually looks at Consumer Reports. I used to use Consumer Reports religiously, but then they got to the point where I'm like, I don't need to buy it. The reviews were getting shorter and shorter, and I'm like, I can go on Amazon or some of these other places and get just as good of reviews from real users. Kind of like with computers. We want people that really use this stuff to tell us what they're like. So we again went with Bosch. that particular model, if I don't know it right off the top of my head, but it had, 4.8 stars above all the others. So
yeah, they make pretty good tools. They've come on in the tool space recently, and they're making pretty good tools.
Yeah, they do good work.
Folks love DeWalt and some of those other Milwaukee and some of those other brands, but I just picked up a
you mean Ryobi's not in your top?
Listen, depends. Like I bought a Black & Decker drill for $20 at Ace Hardware. That was just one of those deals. That thing has just been a champ. Like, and that's, Black & Decker's definitely the bottom of the food chain for these kinds of things. But for what I use it for and how often I use it, for $20, good enough, right?
The funny part about tools is you got to be very careful but you got to do all your research for the very first tool you buy nowadays.
Yeah.
Because of battery compatibility.
Right on. No,
right. Because you're not going to mix. You're not going to get a Milwaukee. No, I don't mind the DeWalt. I'm not going to get, Craftsman because they're on sale. No, I started with DeWalt and now I have to stick with DeWalt because those batteries are expensive and it better work for all of my devices.
Ecosystem. And they've gotten really expensive on the batteries.
Insanely expensive. Yeah, they did a good job of building that ecosystem out. So
it's shaving handles, and you're buying the blades,
and you're paying for the razors 100%. Yeah. We're in the market too. We're trying to get all new appliances. We've been saying that for a year. But yeah, Bosch has been at the top of our list. Maytag, Whirlpool are kind of some of our favorites. I've seen, if they have a TV brand, they haven't been good. Samsung, LG, those ones I haven't been as impressed with. And I've had friends who have had them and just they're great at first and they're really good and they have a lot of features, but the lasting part is what's been going on.
Really? Samsung's been my go-to.
Really?
Yeah.
You like them?
We
for appliances?
Oh, not appliances, no.
No. I'm saying if you're looking at a tea or a fridge and that brand also has TVs, usually their fridges aren't that great. No, Samsung on the TVs, I think they are some of the best out there right now.
Yeah, if when I see a Samsung in another appliance, I'm like, no, that's not what they're good at.
That's exactly my point. That's a much better way to say what I was trying to say. Yeah,
soar with your strengths, my friend.
Stick with your strengths. LG, Samsung, stay with what you're good at.
Well, we did buy a Samsung range, and it's been pretty good. I mean, I did buy the extended warranty on it, but just cause, right? It's one of those kinds of things. But yeah, it's been pretty good. It's it's a flat top. I freaking glass flat top kind of thing. For the last 2 years, we've cooked on it just about every night. I mean, we use the heck out of that thing. So
that's good to know.
Yeah, it's it's hit or miss, but I love your tip on Bosch. They seem to be doing more in that space. Hopefully, sometimes those companies come out with some really good quality and then they get greedy and then they start producing really bad stuff. And you're like, oh yeah, I love this brand, and then it's awful. So hopefully they'll stick.
Well, usually what happens is they follow that BMW model where, in the beginning they're good and they're expensive and people know it, but then it's like, well, we want to appeal to the masses. So let's water it down just enough. And then you got to water it down too much. And now BMW just doesn't have the same cachet that it did in years past.
You're buying a lousy car and it's super expensive to fix, and you're like, okay, this model doesn't work. I don't want to be doing this. So, speaking of models, Ed was asking me the other day, he wanted an update on your truck. So what's going on with your F-150?
Yeah. So no, not an F-150. Oh, that's blasphemy, Jim. It's not an F-150.
What is it?
It's a Chevy. It's a Silverado.
What?
Yeah.
When did this
Heathen.
I know. So I'll make this short and sweet. So I think I'm going to disappoint a lot of people because I've been so excited. We've talked about it for a year. I've had a reservation on the F-150 Lightning. Long story short, the Jeep had another issue come up with it. And it was one of those. So I had that Jeep for 13, 14 years, 200,000 miles on it. And it was just having to have constant issues. And, it came down to the F-150 Lightning. There was just no answers to when my order was going to get called. It could be next week. It could be 2 years from now. And there was no way to know. And so, I was like, before I put another chunk of money down to fix this Jeep, like, I did a lot more research and I just kind of started to look. And it's funny. So everything I loved about the Lightning, just total, if I'm going to go for it, all the tech, future, all electric, like I was devoted. I went the polar opposite. So I gave up on the Lightning. I said, you know what? The Lightning is something like an all electric truck. I can always trade whatever I get in now for that in the future, get a few years down the road. One of my buddies had been hounding me. He's like, dude, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Minnesota, where you're doing your driving to visit stuff, we don't have the electrical grid built out yet for this. Like, you're going to hate yourself because because I know you. He goes, you go to the farm and then you randomly decide you're going to go to Kansas City from the farm and you go up, like all of that driving, like go look at a map on where all the plugs are. It's just not ready here. And he was right. So to a very long story short, I said, okay, if we're not going to do the full tech, I want the longest lasting truck. Because if I drove my Jeep for that long, I want this truck to be the first truck that my kids drive. And my oldest son is 5. So we have 11 years until he drives. So I was like, this truck is going to be what he drives. So I said the least amount of tech as possible. I want most featured. I want off-road. I want rugged. I want the least amount of tech. So what I decided on was a 2022 Chevy Silverado 1500 Trail Boss. Which has a factory lift on it, very capable off-road. I got it in all black, which is kind of my favorite, that sleek all black Chevy look. You're just shaking your head, Jim. Are you so disappointed?
It burns fossil fuels. I'm disappointed.
Oh,
with you.
and it burns a lot. It's really painful to go to the gas station. I mean, this thing is like, I think I average like 13 or 14 miles per gallon. But
and gas, of course, is getting cheaper every day.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I don't cry every time I go to the gas station or anything. I
mean, we do live in an ethanol state, so it's not as bad.
No, it's not.
It's not as bad. I mean, Marv, what are you guys paying for gas right now?
So I went to BJ's and paid $3.39, but the regular prices are up to $3.89.
Okay. Yeah. So you're about 20 or 30 cents more than we are. $3.50 was kind of what I was seeing today for us. So typically nationwide, we're some of the cheapest gas in the US is in the Midwest here. So Mike, but like, this is a big shock, man. Like you were all in, and much like I was on the Cybertruck.
Yeah. That's kind of how
when'd you pick it up? When'd you pick it up?
So I picked it up February 4th. So it was hard to find. So the way Chevy is right now, so I got a 2022, but it's called a 2022 Limited, meaning this is a lot of the new stuff, but not the interior upgrades that they made to the 2022 that are coming out. Those Chevy Silverados actually haven't even come out yet. Those are going to come out in the summer. So went with the 2022 Limited, which actually isn't bad because the cost was a lot lower because they haven't upgraded all the interior. But the model I went with, I went with the things that were really important to me. Like, so it has Apple CarPlay, nice. It has a decent sized screen. And what's interesting is the chip shortage did affect these. And this is how Chevy handled it. I thought this was interesting. So I got in and we were doing the test drive and I went to hit the heated seats button for Hannah because she really likes those. And he's like, oh, that's not in yet. Even though the button's there, the heated seats, the chip isn't in. And he said, so he was actually, this is right when I got it. He's like, so there's two things here, the heated seats and the steering wheel heated, the chip shortage. So what they're going to do is we give you a discount on the front end. And then, so first of all, you're saving money. And then also we're doing a quote unquote recall in the summertime when those chips come in. You bring it in, we install the chip, and then your heated seats work.
That's crazy.
But I thought that was interesting. I kind of liked that though, where they're just like, hey, we know things that I don't really care about, and then a full recall, and I saved money.
Well, why would they want to let that thing sit somewhere for 6 months? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. For heating chips.
Heating chips.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So this thing, it doesn't have lane departure, doesn't have any of that. Like, it's a true.
That is, I don't know, Mike. I'm so dependent on that. It's so great.
Well, see, coming from where I was coming from, everything in here is already an upgrade, so I didn't really notice it.
No, right on.
And it was, again, one of these things of like, the simpler the better, because a good truck can run forever. Yeah. And so I'm like, the less things that can break, the better. Yeah. Not to get too down a rabbit hole, but for you truck fans out there, everyone knows that the 2019 to 21 Chevy Silverados had an issue with their dynamic fuel system, their DFS system. So first of all, it was annoying to people because the trucks had that auto stop where you stop at a light and the engine shuts off.
Hate that thing.
And most people hate it, but the worst part was that the way that the engine was built, the system that would turn those on and off would break. They didn't make it strong enough, and it would seize the entire engine up.
Yeah.
Well, they got rid of that. They X'd the, which is good and bad. That means that I'm using all 8 cylinders all the time. That's why I chug through gas, because it doesn't shut off certain cylinders anymore when I'm going down the road. But yeah, that's what I went with. It is my new baby. Like Hannah makes fun of me because sometimes I go out and I just open the garage door and just look at it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty truck. It's kind of what. Yeah. That all black. I just go sit in it. So I'm big fan on the truck. But yeah, I know I'm going to disappoint some people because I went with less tech. But hey, Apple CarPlay, I'm just getting used to that. That's amazing.
It's pretty great.
These are the simple things that I was missing in life that I didn't know I wanted. But now that I have, they're great.
Marv, you don't have to go out and buy a new car. Okay. Just because we talked about it tonight. You don't.
Well, so that was part of the conversation. So I've got a 2012 Jeep, and it's getting close to, wife's like, getting a new car soon.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna try to squeak another couple of years out of this one.
Yeah,
that's the way I was for the longest time. Like, I'm keeping this Jeep running,
dude. You milked that thing for a long time. Like,
I did.
You've had as long as I've known you, and it was old when we first started podcasting.
I got it when I was a senior in high school.
I know.
So I've had the same car from high school through college through law school to my first 2 jobs. Yeah, it's been my friend.
That's awesome. Well, good for you. Congratulations on the new 2022 Silverado.
Thanks.
That's pretty great. You're gonna love it. I mean, it's so nice getting a new car, and you know the Subaru, my Legacy, still only has 6,000 miles on it. Like,
how long have you had it?
I bought it in May, so yeah.
I've got 1,600 already on mine, and it came with 12. So we have been driving the crud. We take it down to the farm because I love to rip through the fields with this thing. No, my father-in-law was making fun of me because I'm like, dude, I got 0 to 60 through your back cornfield, and he just laughed. I'm like, hey, I didn't have a truck when I was a kid. I didn't get to do all the stupid stuff when I was young, so I'm making up for it now as an adult. I'm getting to do all the fun.
Right on.
Fun with the truck things you do.
No, right on. I mean, it's just super fun. Listen, I have to change my oil now more for time than I do for distance. It's like, it's 6 months. I should probably change the oil. So now you're going to love it. It's super great. And it's just kind of nice to get that. In your case, it was starting to break down probably more than you needed it to.
It was,
right? And at that point that becomes, I bought that Legacy to replace the Honda, but the Honda's been sitting. Sammy has really no need to drive it at this point. So I've been driving it every other day. So I kind of switch between the hybrid on one day and the Legacy on another. And it's okay. I've got the Honda all wired up to have, it's got Amazon CarPlay in it. And so it can do exactly the same. It doesn't have the Apple CarPlay, but it can do almost everything I needed to do comes out of the Legacy with CarPlay, with Apple CarPlay. So I've just been rotating cars.
And it's not spewing fluid everywhere. My Jeep, I had to refill my transmission fluid every 3 to 4 days because it was you'd put it in and then I had this big red spot on my garage floor from that transmission fluid. And it was just getting that.
Did you trade it in? They give you anything for it?
They did. They actually gave me more than I thought they would.
It's crazy right now. It's crazy.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And with Hannah, like they're like, okay, do either of you work in the health system? I'm like, well, she does. He's like, oh, do you mind her being the primary on the account? I'm like, no. And so she jokes to me now. My wife's like, this is my truck, not your truck. Who's the primary on it? Who got us the big discount? And who got more on trade-in for being in the medical system? So yeah, they were doing a pretty good deal on it. Just a quick funny story. I actually blew the tire out during the test drive. We don't know what we hit. We didn't even know we hit anything. We thought it was a rock. We pull back in and also we hear shh, and the truck started to like sink like this. And he's like, oh, let me get this thing back to service before we're riding on rims. And he whips it around and he comes back and he's like, well, now you're buying it. And I'm like, well, okay. He was joking. He's like, no, we'll get a new tire on it if you really want.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Well, the couple, Tony says his friend bought a Highlander and a remote start from the fob as a fee. The remote start on my Legacy in the app is a fee. Yeah.
The app's a fee, but from the key fob. That's surprising. I'm loving the app. I've been traveling a lot again, and I'll get off the plane and start the truck from the app. Like I'll be
Yeah.
deboarding. I'll just start that car. It's nice and warm by the time I get to the garage. It's I'm getting used to that.
Marv, you don't see these kinds of temps. I mean, to you, like 45 is cold, but we've been seeing that polar vortex came through, and it was like 0 with negative 20 wind chills.
Yeah, it's cold.
Super nice to have that. You don't have a remote start on because you have an older car, so you don't. You definitely.
No, I do actually. I have it on my fob. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, my Jeep was loaded, so I got the remote start on the fob, and
pretty handy. You don't.
Nice.
You live in Florida. You don't.
Well, it's just cool to go.
It is kind of cool.
They do it to cool it down, not to heat it up.
Yeah,
right?
That would be true.
Start the AC.
Yeah, exactly. Is it a Wrangler?
No, it's a Grand Cherokee.
Oh, nice. I love the Grand Cherokees. I had an old 93 Cherokee that I drove in high school. It was my dad's old one. I loved that Jeep more than anything in the world. I was so sad. We actually donated it to the summer camp I worked at. That thing is still running, doing camp duty, driving up and down outside, hauling stuff. I love the owner of the camp will send me pictures every once in a while. Like, your Jeep's still going strong. So I love it.
Well, a couple great comments to get us all out of here. Joe says, Mike, I'm only sending you crappy beer. Which
is that because I went Chevy? Are you a Ford guy, Joe?
You only drink crappy beer anyway.
That's true. I'm gonna really enjoy this. I'm not complaining. Just make sure it's Busch Light.
That's perfect. That's
Busch and Chevy go great together.
And then Brian said a lot of dinosaurs had to die to help get Mike from place to place. So,
yeah, I'm not a gleaning example of how to save the environment. We'll just
Ed's gonna cry a little bit. I'm not gonna.
Was he excited about the lightning?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's a Tesla guy.
Yeah.
And so he's a big fan of that.
Before my show last night with the attorney, he just bought a Tesla, and he said today was all about trying to get the electric set up in the house for his Tesla. And he said that was the biggest pain.
Yeah, you got to get an electrician out and they got to install some things and you got to get the right plugs. And Ed just changed out his plug and he was able to just purchase the new cable and it just plugged right in. So he was in good shape, but you have to consider the amperage, if you're in an older home and you have, if you got older service, you're probably going to have to upgrade your.
Well, and in Florida, we don't have, most of us don't have power in the garage.
Right.
So you have to run something. You're right. The older Florida homes, they had 100 amp boxes.
Mm-hmm. So. And if you're putting a 50 amp service, in some cases you can put up to 60. Well, you're upgrading your service for sure at that point.
Well, and that was another reason, to be totally honest. We started to look at the cost. I could, after installation of all the electrical in the home and everything and getting the F-150 Lightning that I wanted, I can get 2 of the trucks I just got. My truck's brand new, 12 miles on it when I bought it. And it's the LT model, so it's not even the cut. It's a decent trim level too. And I can get 2 of these for the total cost it was for the investment of the F-150 Lightning. So I was like, that's another reason. I'm like, I don't know if I like it that much. I don't know if I'm that excited.
Mike, there's some Tesla owners though. I mean, you think of Paul and John and Ed that are, they're going to be disappointed. They were disappointed when I went with a gas vehicle.
I know.
So, Marv, if you had a choice between if you were buying, say you're thinking about it, you're hoping you get a couple more years. Do you think you'll go EV or do you think you'll go back?
I'll go hybrid.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go hybrid. I do want there to one for, power, it's just something about gas power, and the ability to know that if I got to make a trek, I don't want to have to go searching for charging stations.
Yeah.
I'm in that same boat. I almost went when I decided that I wasn't going to go with the F-150 Lightning. I really was swayed towards the Ford Power Boost because that Power Boost is a hybrid engine and it gets like 28 to 30 miles per gallon, but you don't have to charge it up, but it runs, it switches between the battery and the engine. You get almost a full, generator, quote unquote, on board. You get a full power panel in the back. I was like, that's a good combination. Like if Chevy had a Trail Boss that had some sort of hybrid in it, I would have really considered it. This one's a 5.3 V8, which is just fun because it's a lot of power and it's loud and fun. But the hybrid, I think, is a good way to go.
Yeah.
Mike, we are seeing, OPPD, our power company, is trying to be more EV friendly, and they have been installing charging stations around the city of
Oh, I didn't know
Omaha.
that. Okay.
Yeah, so like on early February, early this month or last month, I guess it is now, they put 6 new chargers in down in La Vista that
Okay.
are open to the public, right? And so they're trying to be more EV friendly with that. They actually have a program which is kind of interesting. You can buy shares of their solar farm, and that share, then for every share you buy each month, it'll give you a rebate on your electrical bill. And so you can, like, the more shares you buy, of course, the larger the rebate. So
Yeah.
you start thinking, like, I bought $100 share in it, and now that's getting me $1.61 every single month. And you kind of go, well, that's not very much. Well, but the solar payoff's a 10-year payoff today anyways. So it
Right.
kind of gives
I
me
can
a
do it
way.
without installing it.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
can buy shares in it and get and it's way more this year because they're getting more in it. They're getting more efficient. That rebate's getting more. I started thinking, like, I don't know, maybe I need to buy more shares into this. And you don't have to worry, like, those panels don't get, like, if you put them on your house, they've got a life expectancy and you're
Yeah.
replacing them
You got to clean them.
Clean them, they
Well,
crack.
and it's not like you're going to be switching power companies. Not an option. You're going to be with OPPD as long as you're in Omaha, right?
I thought that was kind of smart. Let me buy into shares of this, and then I'll get a rebate on my. So
the power company's got to be loving all of this, right? Because now they're getting what the gas, companies were getting previously. Like, oh, sweet, yeah, pay us to fill up your car, right? And so they're probably loving it.
Oh, for sure. But
FPL down here in Florida, so they've basically cornered the market on solar power. They made it, even though they claim to have this, discount program where you can get free solars. It's not really truly free. But yet we were driving and they have solar farms all over the state.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's becoming, I think that's, to be honest, I mean, I love this idea of residential doing your own power thing. I mean, it's great if you could actually do it. I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. Collective farms where the maintenance is the same, and it's just not efficient for everybody to have their own solar panels, right? It just doesn't, like, you don't have optimal conditions. You have to change them all the time with the sun. Why would you not just put in solar farms where all that stuff's managed centrally and then buy shares into it?
Yep.
That seems to make more sense to me. So
self-sufficiency, not relying on the grid.
Yeah. Well, no, that's true.
Right. Like that's why I would do it. Because I'm like,
right.
When the grid shuts down, the power still goes out, and then you would still have power out. But if I got a power wall with solar.
This is what's great about OPPD, our power, is they're really forward thinking. So they built a whole cold storage facility for natural gas when natural gas was cheap. And then they just packed it in. They're like, okay,
I don't know.
we're gonna hedge the price on this thing. And they're doing all these alternative. It's just not one thing, right? They're doing all these alternative solutions for it, and they're just being kind of smart about it. And you kind of think, like, they're trying to figure out ways how to store this too. Like, how can we generate electrical energy that may not all get used, and we could store it? How could the city have a battery? Like, they're thinking about that, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, you're pretty cool. So I think we have one of the most forward-thinking power companies here in the United States with OPPD. They do a nice job. So, Marv, thanks for coming out tonight. Now I will kick you off. No, not really. Stay around for a few minutes if you can. Thanks for coming out tonight. Congratulations on getting
for having me.
Your podcast cut over. Mike, congratulations on your new. Can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but your new Chevy Silverado.
Yeah. Yep.
Like a rock. Like a rock.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're running those commercials anymore.
Those were good old commercials. Like a rock.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, America.
Yeah. That's what I feel every time I turn that engine on. I was like, whoa. I'm like,
it's got. I might have gone Dodge. If I was going to do anything, I might have gone Dodge. But
Dodge has really good insides. Their interiors are great.
Well, their engines are great too.
Yeah.
Yep. Right, if you get ahead of me. So we are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. Love to have you come out here and join us. We've gone a little long. If you've made it this far, send me an email, Jim at the averageguy.tv. I'll send you, I'll have some kind of prize for you if you've made it this far. This not applicable to our live folks, but if you're listening to this as a podcast, send me an email, Jim. Say you got all the way.
Doesn't apply to our most dedicated fans. Just
that was a mistake.
Just you losers who listen after the.
That was.
If you happen to fast forward and hit upon this at the end,
he realized how many prizes he was going to have to give out as the chat was rolling by.
No, you're right. They would demand. They're kind of needy out there in the chat room. They'd be like, "Where's my prize?" So, anyways, I actually don't have anything for you, but I'd love to know if you made it all the way to the end. We had Christian on 2 weeks ago, and of course, Christian, Maple Grove Partners. He talked a little bit about that. If you haven't listened to 524, go back and listen to it. It got Marv to buy a TV. It might get you to buy one too, and that's okay. I think this is a good time, Marv. I think you made a good call right now. I think it's a good time if you're getting into TVs. They're pretty inexpensive, relatively speaking. So go back if you haven't heard 524, but secure, reliable, high-speed hosting, maplegrovepartners.com. If you need a plan, if you need to get hosted, does web and media hosting for as little as $10 a month. And I just released, I think this is today. I think I just released the last Cyber Frontiers. Not the last one we'll ever do, but I mean the most recent one, 065 or 65 for most people. If you want to go out and listen to it, we kind of catch up on issues from 2021, and then he looks a little ahead to 2020. I'll record him again, I think March 17th or something like that, 16th or 17th. We're going to try and get Christian on a monthly cycle with podcasting and get Cyber Frontiers kind of back on the road. So if you unsubscribe to it, or maybe you're listening and you're like, what is this Cyber Frontiers? Well, it's a pretty great podcast with Christian, and Christian knows more than the three of us put together. He's forgotten more than we know. Super smart kid. Well, Marv, you might know as much as he does, but definitely Mike and I, not a chance. So check it out, Cyber Frontiers, and just subscribe to it on whatever podcast app you download on. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. If you're listening live, stay around for a smidge of a post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. Tough to do a post show when you've gone an hour and 40 minutes.
That was like the longest show we've done in a very long time.
Yeah, it was super fun though.
Yeah, that was a blast.
Super fun, Marv. Thanks for bringing in the TV conversation.
That's why I had to cut my show to 45 minutes. We had several shows that would go long, and I had to break them into two sometimes.
Yeah, which is not a bad idea, just to be honest. To get those. I just did one at Gallup where the gal had 3 sections and we could just get through 2. And I said, let's save. We've already got an hour. Let's save it for another one. And so we just did that one last night. And I think that's okay. Like this medium supports that really, really well, of being like, hey, can you hold on? Can I have you back? Can you come back on and talk about that? Christian, we did the same thing with Christian. He came on to talk about some what was that first subject he talked about? I guess it was just home networking. And then we never got to the TV stuff.
Kind of like 5G too, right?
I think it was. Well, that was
when you switched over to the 5G.
He convinced me to go to 5G, which has been freaking rocking, by the way. It's been great. You haven't seen me lock up at all tonight, have you?
No, it's been solid. The episodes we've been on since.
Super rock solid. Yeah, which has been great. Brian says awesome show, or excellent show. Thanks, Brian, for doing that. Marv, so are you going to get on a weekly cadence? Did you want to get some just in the can so you were a little bit ahead, or what are you kind of planning on?
So we're going to do the live show will be every week, whether I have a guest or not, but I will be adding in these audio shows that will be, sometimes there'll be just a 5 to 10 minute, snippet, or there'll be an interview with a guest who maybe can't do a Wednesday night show. So we'll do an audio podcast. So we're going to have them all over the place, but we'll still have the regular Wednesday live show happening all the time.
Okay. And what time do you guys do the live show?
8 p.m. Eastern.
That was a miss. I should have made sure you said that on the recorded show. I didn't realize you guys were also doing live. Shoot. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
You should have just forced that in there. I've got Bob and Ryan coming back next week. So live folks, if you're hanging around, we got Bob and Ryan coming back. Mike's out for the week. So but between Bob and Ryan, we'll have enough there. And then Mike, you and I get to do our own show. We haven't done that in a while, just you and me the week after that. Gavin's coming back to talk networking. So we're going to dive into some networking stuff. Then I've got an interesting show coming up. So I've got a guy who is who's made a device that harvests clean water out of the air, right? And this isn't like a new thing, right? There's these devices. Yeah. Well,
but it makes it clean and like drinkable.
Yeah. It makes it clean and drinkable.
That's cool.
So it'll do up to 10 liters a day. Right. And you're out. So
you put this thing outside?
No, it can be anywhere. Well, I mean, imagine if you're in an air-conditioned space, it would slow it down a little bit because you're already taken. But think about how much moisture we have. I was talking to him in a pre-call this week. He's out in San Francisco. And I said, that'd make a great little garden. Like, it's so dry here right now. I'd love to make 10 liters a day and put it on my grass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do a drip system off of that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now, it's probably we didn't talk price. This thing is probably not the cheapest thing on the planet. Although they're trying to make it, I think they're trying to make it affordable because they're trying to get it into areas where clean drinking water is a problem, right? But I mean, I think eventually we're all going to have clean drinking water problems no matter where you're at. I mean, think of the pollution that finds its way into our drinking water. And having some way to produce that. I said, does that have any environmental, like if everybody started doing this, would it have some environmental impact? He's like, we don't think so. Well, of course not. But
yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So
I've got to run and get some work stuff done.
Yeah, no worries, Mike. Thanks for jumping in, man.
Yep. Great to see you guys. We'll talk soon.
Yep. See you guys later. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Keep up the good work. All right. Bye.
Marv, thanks for coming in again. Great to see you, and good luck as you move forward with your podcast. Again, I'll encourage, if you're listening live, get out there and get that subscribed so you catch it. What time Wednesdays again? When are you live?
8 p.m. Eastern.
8 p.m. Eastern, so 7 Central, and out at the site /live, or what's the live site?
So yeah, I do promote the /live. So itbusinesspodcast.com/live, or I will post links to YouTube and the Facebook. So I've got a Facebook page for the IT Business Podcast, and we're actually going to I've teamed up with some Facebook groups so that we'll be promoting within those groups as well.
Good.
But,
good.
You can watch.
Would you send me all that connection information, the various groups and stuff? Would you email that to me, and I'll put it in the show notes so folks can connect in there, and anytime by Saturdays when I release them, Saturday mornings when I release them. So I'd be sorry to cut you off there.
That's okay. Good.
Well, exciting to see where this goes, and exciting to see if it works. I think the new name alone should help, but you got some baseline numbers, right, to kind of work with. So
so I know I'm going to lose a good portion just from the switch. People who maybe don't update their podcatcher. And I think that some of the download numbers now, I didn't say this in the podcast, but if you're live, you'll get this. But one of the reasons I left that network was because the numbers just didn't add up.
Yeah.
And I actually think we were getting either wrong numbers or double numbers sometimes, because the numbers were so out of whack from one show to the next. And what I ended up doing was I could get 3,000 to 5,000 downloads a month, but my listeners, they had a thing where I averaged about 1,500 to 1,600 unique listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I went with. So basically now I'm going to rebuild up and try to get, if I can get back close to that unique listener number, then I'll be fine.
Yeah. Do you have a newsletter?
I don't.
Do you do that? Okay.
No, and that's one of the things that's in my tickler box that I'll be thinking about doing. But this is a hobby, so
no, right on. Listen, I have done the newsletter thing. I start and stopped that a dozen times, I get convicted. Oh, I should do my newsletter. I write one or two and then I'm like, I hate doing this. And so I'm like, why am I doing this? I hate this. So I stop, and then another year goes by, and then I'm like, I should do a newsletter. And, I think I maybe have 60 on my mailing list. Well, that's not really true. I think I have 300 on my mailing list, but only 60 are real people. So I had a whole bunch of people sign up that I don't know why they did. I got this big rush.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're real. So I get about 60, 65. It doesn't do much for me, but it seemed like if you can be consistent with it, and if it's something you can do, it seems like a really good way to engage people.
Yeah, I'm looking at that as a possibility, but right now it's just about getting the numbers back up.
Yeah.
We're possibly going to be doing some members only type things. I didn't want to mention that because I don't know where that's going to go, but if those start to build up, and the monetization, I think, is really the big key, because I can then have somebody help me do some of this stuff. So I want to be able to have something to say, hey, can you help me? I'll give you, whatever to help. So right now I've got nothing to offer them. So,
Yeah. No, it's a good way to look at it. At work, we have 5 monthly newsletters, but I got a whole team that writes those things, so for me, they're fantastic, and I share them and I use them and stuff like that. But somebody else writes them, and maybe I need to get into that mode where I just pay somebody else to write them, type deal. Yep. So I don't know what'd be in them. That's the thing. That's another thing. Like, what would I put in them? Like,
Yeah. And for me in the tech space, there's a lot of stuff I can do, but there's a ton of other people already doing it. So
and doing it pretty well. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to compete against certain people, but I've got a little niche, but I think if I do this right, I'll have enough listenership that I won't have to build on a newsletter or something like that. I would like to do a mailing list, just so that when I want to do something special, I've got a targeted group of audience that will respond, and not throwing something out into the ether and hoping.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I always think of the newsletter and the mailing list as being something similar, but I guess you could see those differently. One is just for pure announcements, and the other one actually has written content that goes in it. So, yeah, good stuff. Well, if you're listening live, thanks for coming. Marv, hang tight for me one more second. If you're listening live, thanks for coming out. We'll see you guys next week. Bob and Ryan are back. Mike is off for the week, and we'll see you guys next Thursday. Thanks for coming out. Always appreciate you guys.